Welcome, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in today to our Cafecito Conversations. This is a monthly informal chat with friends from around the country on things that I think are pretty important. Again, we just thank you for taking the time out today to be with us. I'm your host, Dr. Liz Rios, and I'm the founder of the Passion Center. So if you want to know more about what we're doing in that faith community, you can go check that out at our website at thepassioncenter.org. And stick around, because at the end of this broadcast, we're going to announce who is the winner of Will You Be My Madrina invitation kit. So if you want to win, you got to stick around to the end. So today we're talking about madrinas and why we need one and how to be one. And I've gathered an amazing panel of Latinas who represent different perspectives and age groups. And I'm super honored to have with us tonight two very special women that many of us in the Brown Church consider to be madrinas. You probably already know them, and you don't even necessarily have to look at their names because you probably know who they are by looking at the screen. So if not formally, but maybe from afar, for the work that they've done in the Brown Church and for how they've modeled for us what they've done in working with people in the community, these women have been giants for us in the Brown Church. These women are Madrina, Reverenda, Doctora Elizabeth Conde Frazier, who I met first while working at the Latino Pastoral Action Center when she was awarded a Latina in Ministry Award. And she was instrumental in my life because she was the first one who believed in me even before I had a doctorate, okay? She called me and she said, Liz, this is a good opportunity for you to write academically. And the reason why there's a chapter out there on These Women Are Warriors in Latino Religions and Civic Activism is because of Dr. Elizabeth Conde Frazier, that she believed in me and said I could do it even though I was doing it afraid. I will always be very grateful to her for that opportunity. Then we have with us Madrina, Reverenda, Doctora Alexia Salvateria, and to know of her work also while working at LPAC. And I found out about what she was doing, training pastors and leaders on justice issues, civic activism, and organizing. And then years later, when I was doing my Doctor of Ministry dissertation, I reached out to her to see if she could help me out with some research and just give me some pointers. And she was so gracious. She sent me everything she had worked on, all her research herself. And I was just like floored by her graciousness, because believe it or not, in the academic world, people do not do that. Okay. So I was just really gracious that she trusted me with that. So ladies and any gents watching, we have two giants in the church with us tonight. So I'm telling you to light up the chat with some love. If you have known them, if you appreciate them, if they have impacted your work in any way. Now, I'm going to give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves, where they're calling in from, any self-identifiers, any role or organization they represent. So, of course, I'm going to defer first to La Madrina. So I will start with Doctora Elizabeth Conde Frazier.
You're asking me to introduce myself.
See, where you're calling in from and any self-identifiers, and tell them about what you're doing with our ed right now.
Sure. So I'm calling from Michigan right now, where it's definitely fall. And I'm working with the Association for Hispanic Theological Education. And it's very exciting work because I get the chance to hear about what people are doing in different organizations. And that includes not just the usual traditional organizations, but really non-traditional organizations as well, formal and informal theological education, and to get people to know each other and to collaborate, to create different partnerships so that they can give to one another, and to create comunidades de práctica where people share monthly for about an hour and a half. And in those communities, people are able to talk about innovations, problem solving, best practices, and they're able to discover in one another some really good partners. And they do some theological reflection. They can do more intimate work. And we can share something that we always take for granted in the Latino community, which is tacit knowledge. Tacit knowledge is different than wisdom. Tacit knowledge has a lot to do with how it is that we've learned as we go along, the things that we've learned, and we just kind of take them for granted. Oh, you mean that you never did that before? Oh, well, and we begin to talk about how to do particular things. There's a particularity, an insight lining to what we've learned to do, and that's the tacit knowledge stuff.
Oh, wonderful. Can you explain a little bit more of how people can get involved with something like that?
Yes, you can go on www.aet, as in Tom, th.org. www.aeth.org. And it's a website that's bilingual. So if it comes up in Spanish, you go to the little world thing on the right, you hit that, and it'll come up all in English. And check out what's there. But if you want to know about the network that I'm working with, it's called Redet, R-E-D-E-T, Redet, la Red de Entidades Teológicas. And again, it's very bilingual. There are a lot of young adults who are a part of that. A lot of the millennials, some of the Gen Zs are also a part of that. And they're having fabulous theological reflection conversations with one another. I put them in comunidades de práctica with one another so that they can have those conversations. But I also have different madrinas and padrinos in those conversations as well, because this is an important piece. The intergenerational piece is very important. We're not going to do this whole thing that, you're over there and los viejos are over here. We can't do that. We can't afford that, because there's so much wonderful knowledge, wisdom, opportunity that we can give to one another, and we have to cross-fertilize all of our conversations with what we have to offer one another. We really are a gift to one another.
Amen.
So look up Redet, go up to servicios, services, click services, you'll see a menu, and you'll see Redet come up.
Wonderful. And we'll make sure that we add this to the conversation after the chat. Thank you for that. And I believe in that so much. That's why I wanted to make sure that we had some millennial voices in the house today. And the next madrina, Reverenda Alexia.
So I am, as of July 1st, so I have to say my title, but I am the professor at Fuller, assistant professor of integral mission and global transformation. I also coordinate the diplomado. And the diplomado is the diplomado en la respuesta de la iglesia en la crisis migratoria. And we actually now have it. It's for Hispanic pastors and leaders. And our first two cohorts were only in Spanish. It's all online. And then our current cohort, we have Spanish tracks and English tracks. And the English tracks are particularly for young bilingual, mostly millennials. Latinx millennials that are really wanting to do it in Spanglish. And so that's really what those tracks are. So we'll be starting another cohort in January, just so that if you're interested in participating, it's a 6-month online program, but it really looks at all the different levels of ways that the church can respond, right, to the immigration crisis. So, how do we respond to the legal crisis? How do we respond to the trauma pastoral crisis? How do we respond to the organizing crisis, right? Mm-hmm. How do we respond to the theological crisis? That all of those are really part of every month has a different focus. The other thing that I do is I am called La Madrina in the organization that I help lead. And it's Mateo 25, Matthew 25, M25 in English, but M25 doesn't work so well. Because it sounds like a pandilla. But M25 is a network of immigrant and non-immigrant churches that are working together on accompanying and advocating for families that are facing detention and deportation. And we only work because we have a network called the Puentes, who are bilingual, bicultural Latinx millennials who actually help the immigrant congregations and the non-immigrant congregations work together. So that's what I do.
That's
Some of the
it. That's
people who
it.
work with you
Right?
are
That's
with
what,
it.
see, that's what I do. I want the Madrinas to stand because we made it official and they have the Madrina t-shirts on.
Oh yeah. I
See,
don't know.
La Madrina. There you go. There you go. Yay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Haiti, why don't you go next?
Sure, yeah. Well, it's nice to meet everybody. These beautiful ladies. My name is Haiti. I'm actually calling from Los Angeles, on California.
Oh, that's where I am.
Yes, and I have been blogging for a year. I have a website where I've just been piecing together elements of my faith, theology, identity, and culture as a Latina. So that's been pretty amazing to share with my community of friends. But I just want to affirm Doctora Elizabeth really quickly because through this blog, I was able to connect with other young líderes in AET. And I was just so blessed with a new community to amplify what I've been doing and give more resources into this and brown theology and everything that I mean we'll be able to talk more in this live, but everything that we go through as millennials, I'm seeing wow, a lot of our ladies have gone through this and can help us process these difficult transitions or these difficult elements that we're trying to live out in our identity as Christ followers and as Latinas. So that's a little bit about me.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Giuliani.
Yeah, so mi nombre es Juliani González Nieves. I'm originally from Canóvanas, Puerto Rico. I'm currently calling from Highwood, Illinois, which is mainly Mexican American Mexican immigrant community. I work at Trinity International University and Trinity Evangelical Divinity School as the Alumni Relations Coordinator. I graduated last year with my Master of Divinity from TETS, and I am la mujer detrás de globaltheology.com. So
Wonderful. And
yeah.
she's a beast on Twitter. So definitely go and follow her on Twitter and you will be educated and have your Twitter MDiv in no time. I'm just going to put it out that way. Jasmine, why don't you go next?
Yes, hi. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm Jasmine Lopez calling in from Maywood, Illinois, just outside of Chicago, Illinois. And I'm a co-founder, executive director of a nonprofit called the Firehouse Dream, where we teach creative skill sets to youth from communities that have experienced disinvestment. So I've been a professional photographer and creative in the industry for over the last 12 years. And now I've kind of transitioned into a season of mentoring and teaching different kinds of creative skill sets to our youth.
Wonderful. So as you can see, there's no slackers on this call. I'm just putting it out there. All right. So let's dig in on our conversation. The topic of Madrinas actually started through multiple Zoom calls with various different people. And even on our last conversation, our Cafecito conversations with our sisterhood alliances, we just started talking about the need for women to kind of step in the gap and be there for one another and kind of be guided by wiser people that have been through experiences. And I believe this is a topic that needs to be addressed and speaking to various different people, that is a consensus, you know. Now the term is something that we have heard of a lot in the Latino community. And I think it was Haiti who put me on to the fact that even the Blanquitos are talking about this because there's a book out. Who was the lady that you mentioned, Heidi?
Yes, author Lisa Peperet, I believe.
Something like that. And she actually has a book. I actually looked it up. She's talking about godmothers. So I was like, wait a minute. This is not just our conversation. The Blanquitas are having it too. ¿Qué es eso? You know? So apparently, you know, if they're talking about it, you know, we're behind the eight ball. you know. So this is something that we need to address, and this is something that the term is known as, another translation of it is godmother. And there's no mention of godparents or godmothers or godfathers in the Bible. But it is something that has been seen through, early Christian times, when someone would be called to kind of vouch for someone else that wanted to, join the Catholic Church, or someone that would be a guide on our side, someone that would be a mentor, and that would help us to develop our faith based on what we saw in their lives. And as a matter of fact, one of the things I found was in the Celtic tradition, they have something called Anam Cara, which is also called soul friend. So apparently across cultures and through history, godparents has been something that's been discussed in different ways. In Mexico, they call it compadrazo, and it's a network of family members that kind of like step in as for baptism when the child is young, and they're linked together. So as the child's growing up, that person kind of walks with them. So I'm sure most, if not all, of the panel members today, maybe some of you that are out there listening to us today, have had some experience or are either madrinas or have, believe it or not, I've never been asked to be a madrina though. So I don't know who to hold responsible for that. Pero, vamos a ver. And there's people that have wanted to have madrinas in their lives. So today, as we dig into this topic, the first question will go out to madrinas, the madrinas on the panel. So I would like you to share with us today your experience, if any, with this role, and why you believe it is an important one.
Elizabeth, you want to start?
Sure. Well, first of all, I never had a madrina. I would say that the women in my life, what they did was they talked about the fact that I was the first one in my family being born here in the United States, and that I would have to be a woman that I would have to invent, that woman had not been seen yet in our family, and I would have to invent the woman that I had to become in this new place. And so for that, what my mother did was she taught me to only listen to God. She said, don't listen to what other people tell you, because they will always tell you what they think. The only one who created you is God. And that's the one that you listen to. So she took this really wiry little girl, skinny as I am, I was real wiry, etc. And she taught me to meditate so that I would listen for God's voice. And that was very, very important, because there were naysayers as we went along, especially in my generation in the church, right? I became a pastor very early on, and there were a lot of naysayers. And she had just taught me, she says, you don't have to listen to anything that they say. You only have to listen to God, and you only have to follow God and move forward with God, and that's it. And I lost my mom when I was 19. She died of cancer. She died young. She was 45. And but she had taught me that piece, right? So in a sense, that was the gift that she left me, was that. It's interesting that you would call me a madrina, or that other people, would say that about me, because I don't think that madrina is something that you go out, with your T-shirt and say, hey, I'm the madrina, come on over. Yeah, I think that people have to get a feel for that as they appreciate the ways in which you've interacted or what have you with them. Then it's people who kind of place you in that position. And when they do, and they make that evident to you, then you do have a responsibility to discern what is the best way to respond to that person, because not everybody's the same. I think that's an important thing for a madrina to know. Not everybody's the same, and you don't respond to everyone in the same way. Not everyone needs the same things from you. And also understand that you're going to be receiving gifts from the person that you are madrina to. It always goes both ways. I always tell people that the relational is transformational. So it's a beautiful opportunity for both of you to grow in some new ways, right? So I'll leave it there. Alexia, take it over.
Boy, that was so interesting, Elizabeth. That was also, I had a moment of real sadness when you asked these questions, because I really did realize that I had never had one. My family comes from Mexico and from Russia, and they were both part of the anti-church tradition. So there wasn't even the sort of formal madrina. There wasn't even that. But differently, my mother and my grandmother were both really amazing. I had an amazing mother. I had an amazing grandmother. My grandmother, my Mexican grandmother, was really fierce. She was an activist, and she just expected me to change the world. And my mother also my mother would always say, my Russian mother would say, reach for the stars and you'll land on the moon. I don't know where she got that, but she so believed it. Like she believed it with such fierce intensity. So, but there is this complexity when it's your actual mother and your actual grandmother. There's no space there. There's very deep, intricate, painful, beautiful interactions, but there's no space to breathe. There's like so much pressure on some level when it's your actual mother, your actual grandmother, that the experience of being a madrina is the experience of there's this deep connection, like a mama, like an abuela, but there's also space because you are not the same, right? And so the spirit can move through that space. Like there's a breathing room. Like the spirit is always connected with breathing to me. There's breathing room. And I was thinking that actually the first time I even had an elder, there were no women pastors either that I ever knew. I was the first. I was ordained 32 years ago. And it took me 10 years to be ordained because I literally had not even to mention not knowing a Latina. I didn't know any women pastors. I mean, none, right? So it was really responding to the call of God, responding to Jesus, responding to the Spirit that just led me forward. And then I did have that support from my mother and grandmother to respond, just like you, to respond to whatever I heard. But I didn't even have an elder until I was literally in my 40s, that I met Dolores Huerta in my 40s, and she became an elder for me, a mentor. But she wasn't a madrina because, and I thought about this a long time, because she wasn't invested in me. Like, again, I have the exact same experience that Elizabeth did, that people call me madrina, and I accepted it. I didn't choose to be their madrina. What I did organically was invest in them, was believe in them, but with the space that I'm talking about, believing in them to find their way. And then being willing, when I think about investing, I think about the blessing of Isaac, that you pass on, that you've been given something you pass on the power that you've been given. You actually pour that power into the person in front of you, but you just do it because the Spirit is moving you to do it. It's not a conscious choice. And then they call you madrina because it's what has happened. It's the best way of describing what has happened. But my kids, the ones that I invested in, my spiritual children, they know that I have their back, right? They know that we can fight, and we do fight. Luchamos, ¿no? De vez en cuando. I mean, maybe mate de vez en cuando, right? But we have respect, and we never lose respect, either of us. I don't lose respect for them. They don't lose respect for me. But I celebrate their victories. I'm really proud of them. So investment is not even just like, I'll be there for you when you're in trouble. It's like, I know that you will go farther for us than I have been able to go. And so, I'm here. I'm here to celebrate you. I'm here. And it's funny, it brings me to tears. But and I think that what happens after a while, you're not just the madrina of individuals either. Like there are, I have, my hijas spirituales that I spend time with, that I mentor, that I, know very well. But then there are all kinds of young women that in the circles that we're part of, that call me madrina, because there's a sense, and I know this is true, Elizabeth, for you too, that there's a sense in which you also become a mother of the community, a madrina of the community, so that everybody can come under the wings, because it's really the wings of God. It's not your wings, but they can come under the wings that you get to embody, even if they don't come all the way in and nestle, right? They can just come under the wings, and it's fine. They're happy that the wings are there. So, but it is a responsibility. I feel it as a responsibility.
If
I
I
don't
could,
half the time I don't even know like where it's going to call me or what, but I just know that it's there.
Wow. I mean, that is incredibly deep what you both have shared. And I think that it shows why it's important because you're filling a gap. And yes, like you mentioned, there are some people that you may not have never met, but for a community, for a group of people, they bestow on you that gift. And yeah, maybe it comes with the t-shirt, but it's really that you have been this for me, even though you don't know it, because of what you've modeled for other people. So that's why I think it's important what you've mentioned, because it's a gap that this person fills, whatever you people choose to call it. So let me begin by asking my panel of millennials to respond to what you've shared, and I'll start with Jasmine.
Yeah, I mean, my brother. So I was raised in a single parent home. My brother had padrinos, but I didn't get one. And so I saw the dynamic of what that looked like with him growing up with them in his life. However, I didn't have that, and so there was a piece of me that always that has longed for a madrina, but I've never had one. In my experience, my spiritual experience has been one that has been uniquely me and Jesus, and I'm super grateful that he met me for who I was as a teen, and that we had this one-on-one experience in such a real, loving kind of way. But I haven't really ever had any sort of madrina in my life, and it's something that I long for now at 36 years old.
Giuliani?
So I do have not just one madrina. I think I have three. It's
Abundance.
blurry because they become madres. So at the end of the day, I'm like, Mom, tú le dijiste a so and so and so. Are these the official ones? Because then there are the officials, but then some other people were added. And for me, it was very important. And I want to say their names because it's me, Titi Monin. She's the fiercest woman I have ever met. Uh, she was so instrumental. Igual Titi Mimi, Titi Dalia. I grew up in a non-Christian household, and I am the only child. So it was my madrinas y padrinos who were like, ¿Quieres ir al culto de niños? I'll take you. And with that organic interaction, they disciple me, and I ended up like being raised in the church and going into leadership. Titi Monin, she would take me to camps, youth camps. She would say like, "Oh, they asked you to serve in this position. Yes, I'll take you," and she would be my driver for everything. So for me, and now I am a madrina, so I do have una ahijada. Her name is Haspe Andrea Nieves Santiago. And then by extension, her sister and brother become like part of it. So for me, it has been very interesting ser una madrina even a distancia. So there are lots of books that I send them, Right now, that's my goal, to get them to read. But I think like when it comes to more like theological training, I don't have a madrina. And maybe it's because of my particular interest. I'm very interested into dogmatic theology, systematic theology, and we all know about the lack of representation. So we want to honor the people who have been trailblazers in these different spaces, theological spaces. But we also know that there are just a few people too. And I'm always in a little bit of like, it's a fear out of respect, because I know that we have the same few people who have been called upon by everybody, to, hey, I would like if you could mentor me, if you could mentor me. And part of me is like, I want to respect that space. So yeah, it has been hard and difficult in that sense. The other thing is that I learned English later. So I think like this space of conversations in the more like English speaking United States Latino These came for me later. I wasn't raised here. In Puerto Rico right now, we only have one systematic theologian, one female systematic theologian, and that's Dr. Agustina Luis Nunez, under whom I did my internship. But then again, like, like she's been called upon by everybody under mamas to do all these things. So it's like, yes, I think for me, there is a question of having here las madrinas. And actually, I call Elizabeth Conde Fraser and Loida, I call them las matriarcas. I always call them las matriarcas. So how do we are able to build this structure of mentorship and madrinaje, we at the same time that we take care of the madrinas, because we understand that there is an asymmetry in the need for mentorship and the number of madrinas that we have in this community.
I appreciate you mentioning that. You made a couple of distinctions here today, because you mentioned that there's different spaces that madrinas or matriarchs can fill. That life one, that fill in the gap in the life part, and walk with us through faith and help us to discipleship, to disciple us, but also in the theological aspect as well. So, and depending on where people are in their various seasons, in their various theological aspects of how they view life in general, they may not even be thinking about those different spaces, and some of them may be. I appreciate the fact too that you mentioned how do we take care of them, because that's really important too, which we'll get to at the end. I think you saw my notes. And we have to remember that in this process of talking about people that fill these spaces, matriarch, madrina, whatever term we want to use to honor these people that have come before us, we have to think about a lot of different aspects of what that entails. So hold on, people, because we're going to get to that at the end. Haiti, what would you say in response to what has been shared so far?
Yes, I love that Doctora Alexia shared that it's sometimes hard when you only have mom or grandma, and it's too, there's no space. There's no space to breathe. Or there, I felt those high expectations before, and I remember when I had the call with you, Doctora Liz, as well. It was very hard for me to grasp. I don't know if I had a madrina, but now that I look back, I think it was just very hard to, because there was no structure. There was like no officialness about it. It was just very organic. I want to thank, during my adolescence and time during college, Miss Darling Garcia, who I recognize in this conversation now as a true spiritual madrina. I think in my time as a teen, adolescent, she was seeing in me different gifts and affirming that, and affirming spiritual gifts, affirming leadership, being very intentional about these areas in my life that I didn't have other ladies, mention or see or just validate. And so for me, she definitely took that role to nurture that and say, I see something in you. And as you continue in school, I'm going to be keeping an eye on you. Let me know what you need, just nurturing in that aspect. And so I look back, and I never called her one. I didn't know what were the expectations, or what the relationship would look like. But I just knew I had this woman who validated me as a woman and as a leader, and that she can definitely fill in that madrina, person in my life. And today, these days, I also want to recognize Miss Yvette Santana, who has just taken the time to sit with me as I reflect in my identity and in my Pentecostal roots that we grew up with together, and we wrestle that out, and she's there for me, present when I felt like maybe I couldn't find it, like that space that I was mentioning and that Doctora Alexia was mentioning with mom. It was like, okay, in here I find a little more freedom to be a little more expressive, a little more open, and have somebody take on also fill in and take on this space with me and be okay in the tension and be okay without having any sort of like high expectations of me. So I'm very thankful for her life, and as she's seen me develop and grow and question things, and it's okay. Like I know that it's okay with her. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that, one of the patterns that we heard, I think besides Giuliani, most nobody else had a madrina here. Giuliani had an abundance, so blessings, my sister, on that, because that's a beautiful thing. And I'm wondering if this is practiced a little bit differently, because you always are making that distinction, even on Twitter. Oye, it's not the same, Puerto Rico and the United States, pay attention. So I'm wondering, is there something different that you've seen as far as how it's practiced over there as opposed to the United States?
Oh, so I can only speak to the culture of my Pentecostal church in el barrio Campo Rico in Canoanas. I know that padrinos y madrinas are also part of a Catholic tradition, but I will not speak into it because that's not my experience. But in our iglesia, even like at least in that barrio, even like people like my parents who were not Christians, and you will find non-Christians who have a lot of respect for like Jesus and the Christian faith, and a desire, right, for their children to be protected and blessed by God. That idea of being blessed by God. They would do una dedicación del niño. So you have your kid, and then a couple of months you will arrange la dedicación. We don't do a baptism like our Catholic brothers and sisters, but es una dedicación, and then the pastor, they have a ceremony, and you will have the parents and you will have family, but you will have padrinos and madrinas. So basically, the role of them, and they make a vow to be an example to these babies as they're growing up. And especially they're called upon to be spiritual leaders, like disciplers of this baby. So to take on this role is a huge responsibility. And my padrinos and madrinas, they really took it very like with a lot of responsibility. They really embody that for me. So it is a common practice in my church and my denomination, Pentecostal denomination. I wonder if it's different in other churches, but yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I grew up in the Pentecostal church too, and I remember you even had to take like a class or something for the godparents to actually be able to come and stand in witness to your dedication of your child. The thing is that and this is where I'm going to go into the next question. So as we see that there is, we've seen it, we've heard it, we may not have experienced it the way we would have liked. How can we bring this back? Because in the United States, what I've seen in my own experience as a Pentecostal is that there's some people that do take it very, very seriously, and they're calling you like every day. And then there's some people that are like, after the dedication, they're like, see ya, you know? And maybe they call you to say, oye, ¿cuándo tú te vas a casar? You know? So I think that there's different aspects because of education, I think too, being able to understand that role. Maybe they didn't have the class and they didn't understand the importance of it. But I'm wondering, for anyone on the panel, how is it that we can bring this back to a place where it is honored and respected and actually practiced in that seriousness?
I think I want to say that God is always doing something new, right? You always have to pay attention because something new is trying to be born or starting to be born that you need to nurture. And part of what I sense is that I love the word you used, Juliana. I don't remember it exactly, but it was this vision of the structure of Madrinas. It was a word that you used, but sort of the sense that there is a way of being Madrina for the community, right? And there are like different levels. There are people that I for me, there are people who need a very close, intimate mentoring, and that's sometimes very structured. I have very structured mentoring relationships with some young women. Um, there are other people who just, Sandra came on earlier, and said hi to my madrinas. Well, Sandra and I sometimes we'll go 6 months without talking at all, maybe more. But then we'll be in a circumstance and then we'll have a really significant talk because I haven't forgotten from the last talk, and so we can take up from there. Well, that's a very different structure, you know. And then when I actually got my doctorate, I was really very frustrated because my supervisor had been really hard on me and really negative. And then when I actually did my orals, he said at the end, "I repent. I didn't think your research meant much, but it was actually really important, and I'm going to give you honors." And I should have been happy, but on another level, I was furious.
Yeah.
I was like, it only took till now at my orals for you to understand that. So I was like wanting to throw the paper in the, and then, but there was, Eric was there, Christy's husband. I just don't remember his last name. But so, and I know Christy's been on your show, so I know you know who I mean. But he was there, and so he texted his wife. Yes. So he texted Christy. And so by the time I left out in this horrible mood, and I walked like 3 blocks back towards Fuller, and there was this little group, Jennifer Guerra and, Inez, various people from Fuller, who were like standing on the corner, jumping and jumping up and down, because I had blown open a door, right, for them, and that was a way of being madrina also, right? For me to hug them back and to say, okay, I will keep going forward because I know that I am busting with my fierce head. I am busting a door open for you. And that's intentional. So there are just like in the new thing that God is creating, there are just these various different ways. We don't need to fit it into one box. We need to just see how it's evolving and then nurture it. But I think you probably, hermanitas, I think you probably have some ideas for what you need and how you think it should develop. And I'm sure Elizabeth has other experiences, right? Like, how do we develop these range of ways of being madrina, not just one, not just the tradition, right?
You want to answer that, Dr. Elizabeth?
There are different points there are different points of development. So you have the madrinas that are the more traditional, and they see us through our lives as we are children and so on and so forth. Puerto Rico is different than being in the diaspora, and the reason for that is that a madrina or a padrino is a person who's going to see you through the steps that they went through. When you're in the diaspora, especially between the first and the second generation, the first generation hasn't walked there yet, and they can't be the people who help you to walk on a path that they haven't been on. We find ourselves many times in the position that we are leading our parents and our grandparents. We're the ones translating, we're the ones learning what this world looks like and doing for our families, right? And then if we're the older sibling, as I was, then, you're kind of doing that for all the other ones who come behind you. And you're doing that and if you're part of a church, the church in the diaspora becomes the new extended family. And I was also one of the older ones in that new extended family, the church. And so when I went to college, I had to be the one to find out all the information, and then I had to turn back and lead everybody else in that, et cetera, et cetera. So it is very different when you are in country of origin than when you come into the diaspora. That changes things a great deal. The other thing is that when we come to the point where we have to differentiate from our parents cannot continue to be our madrinas and so forth, right? Because we need, as some of you have already said, we need that space. And so they have been examples for us. They have been formational to us. But then comes the moment in which you need someone who's going to lead you into a new space in your life, right? And that's where calling is so important, because you're being led according to your calling. And that's where, for those of us in this particular circle, The theological education piece is important, and having people who can lead us through that and lead us in the different callings that brings for us, right? And now you need someone who can sort of lead you differently in this new part of your life. And then you have the relational pieces of our lives, right? Who leads us as we become mothers, as we marry, or as we choose not to marry. And that should be something that we recognize as well, right? That's a very important piece as we go through those other personal pieces of our lives. And so we have persons who are good to us in that sense, who can come alongside and guide us. And so there are all of those different pieces to the complexity of how we grow up and so forth, and what it is that we need. I think an important piece, as most of us here are adults, is that we reach out. If you want a madrina, reach out, right? Reach out, know what it is that you want, and be realistic about your expectations. Be realistic about your expectations. Show appreciation. That's really important because, no one gets paid for this, etc. Lo que estamos haciendo es dando por gracia lo que hemos recibido por gracia.
Amen, amen.
And for those of us who understand that we're being seen as madrinas and, madrinas in the community rather than just the one-on-one, right? We have to maintain a particular life because there's a spiritual authority. And I say the word authority as juxtaposed to power, okay? Authority is not power. So there's a particular authority that we have that I know that when I walk into a room and some people are going to see me as madrina for whatever reasons they do, that I am open to what the Spirit would have me to do in that space, that I'm open to understanding that I'm representing particular things in that space, that I walk into that space, not just to do the one thing that I was asked, but that I walk into that space to do what it is that, to make myself available to the Spirit and how the Spirit would ask, right? And I don't just do that. That's why you can't be a really busy person, because busyness doesn't allow you to have that spirituality that's necessary, right? So when I say yes to being a part of something, I have to come ready to it. And that means I have to prepare for being there, etc., and for being into the fullness of who God would need me to be in that certain space. And that's when you know that you come into that space with the wings of God that Alexia Salvatierra was speaking about. God does give you those wings. And by the way, there were padrinos and so forth in the Bible because you had the schools of prophets. And let's not forget how, Elijah and Elisha, right? El manto que le cae a Eliseo when Elias goes up, that was an important thing. And if we go into understanding what were the schools of prophets and how things happened in there was a lot going on in there. And then the other thing is offer your own gifts when you come into the relationship, right? We talked about, madrinas need care as well. So offer your own gifts. What do you understand that you might be able to offer in that relationship as well, so that it's a well-balanced relationship and so forth. So those are the different things. The fact that there's so much that is new that God is doing today, that's a great thing. I've always said I love chaos. Chaos is great because you see, if you're looking at chaos with the understanding of God in the midst of it, what you see is that the resurrection moment, irrumpe. I love that word in Spanish. You don't say it the same way in English, right? It erupts into our time and space. And when it does, what's in our time and space changes under it. And that change creates a chaos, you see. And that moment of chaos is a beautiful opportunity for recreating. Yeah? And so for us to be always discerning, Madrinas have to be very discerning in this time. And those of you who would reach out, you also have to be discerning, right? I've had people say, "Oh, I would love to, sit at your feet." But in the moment that they say it, I understand from the spirit that I really am not the person for that person, right? For whatever reasons there are. Sometimes because of proximity, sometimes because I really am not the person. I don't have the kinds of giftings that that person needs, etc. And I may not know that. I mean, this could be a total stranger. But what I do at that moment is I take the person through an exercise of discernment, right? So that they don't feel like, oh, she dissed me or something like that, right? But I take them through an exercise of discernment, again, because you take that seriously when someone asks you that. And you go through an exercise of discernment. So discerning is important. The Spirit is doing new things. The church is changing. Our callings, therefore, need to change in this world, etc. How we prepare for that is different. How we dress spiritually for that is different. So all of that means that we have to be very discerning. And our relationships are gifts of discernment to one another when we do these pieces.
Can I tell an Elizabeth story?
Oh God! Please
I
don't
just feel like
embarrass
I
me.
just feel like I discern that I have to tell the story right now. I don't know completely why.
Okay.
But Elizabeth and I were asked to do a workshop on Comunidad de Base for the Decolonizing Lutheranism Network in the Lutheran Church. I'm a Lutheran
And
pastor.
Alexia manipulated me into doing this with her. Tell them that part as well.
So anyhow, so Elizabeth never, like she said, she never comes without discerning that the Spirit is calling her. And this was a network of young people who are very wounded. There are young people who've been trying to, mostly young people of color, different backgrounds, but trying to make their way in a very traditional denomination in lots of ways, and just so bruised. And so what came to Elizabeth was for us to begin the workshop by giving everybody. She and I went around with baskets, and we gave everybody flores and chocolate and agua
And hugs.
and hugs. Yes,
And
it was
glad
pre-COVID.
we were to see them.
Pre-COVID, but we came as Madrina, see, going to the speaker picture. Like, we weren't going to take them on as individual mentees, but we came in that moment with the wings, right, of the Spirit, to, in that very, very embodied way, to give them those gifts that everyone needs: chocolate, flowers, water. Everyone needs it, right? So, and they would pass it down, and it just changed the whole mood. That was a moment, of madrinidad, if we want to say it,
Yeah.
And so I feel like that I just wanted to give that story for what she was saying.
No, that's beautiful. And I remember too, when we gave her the award at LPAC, she received the award, but you know what she did? She got on her knees and she just was praising God. And I never seen that in an award ceremony. And tell me, talk about changing the atmosphere. Everybody started praising. It was just like, that's what we do, because the glory goes to God. The honor goes to God. Everything that we do is for him. So she received it, but she just gave it right back to him. And the message, she didn't say nothing with it, but the message, my goodness, que todo mundo was talking about it for like years after, you know what I mean? Like how do we receive this now? It was just a beautiful message to everyone in that space. And she has been very discerning, even in how we relate to each other. And there's some people, and we've talked about this in the last half hour, that discernment is so important in this process, because people like Juliana, you said, right? We all go to certain people. We know who we look at and who we are fond of and who we would love to emulate in various ways. And we want to go up to them and say, hey, would you do this for me? But that discernment on both ends is really important. And also, I think from what you've shared today, Madrinas, too, is who are we letting define the labels? That is so crucial. Like, this can look so many different ways. And instead of us allowing ourselves to be boxed in to what other people have said, and you know who all those other people usually are, that this is what a godparent is, this is what a madrina is, this is what a matriarch is, this is what a person that pours into you does. We should have that discernment to see what it is that those people are going to represent in our lives. So I think that's a word for us today, that let's throw out the labels. You know, it's about the limitless influence really that people have over our lives, whether they're close up or whether they are from afar. And I appreciated what you said, Dr. Elizabeth, about that we have to live a certain kind of life too, because it's so important, you know, that people are watching us. And like the celebrities that are playing basketball, that they said, I don't want nobody watching me, I'm not no role model. Yeah, when you are put in certain platforms and you are doing what God has called you to do, there are people watching. So I appreciated what you said with that. And to end, since we are almost at our time, I would like to ask, what is it that we need to bring this? What is it that we need to see? So forgetting about the label, what is it that you, as a woman, need right now in this space that you are calling God for and saying, Lord, provide such and such in this role? What is it that you need?
I'm going to turn the lights on in here, or you're not going to see me in just a minute. I'm sorry I didn't think about that.
It's okay.
But I'm listening. Just 2 seconds. Keep going.
Yeah. So what is it that you need as we talk about this? You know, Dr. Elizabeth said, you know, ask, right? Ask people for that you want to fill this role. So what is it that you want to see, ladies?
I had two words come up to mind when I was hearing the Madrinas talk, and I heard the word like empowerment. Like that's a big element. It's what bridges that generational gap, where that fills it in between that gap. I think there are things that our Madrinas know. There are things that they probably foresee us that we're going to go through, or through the discernment process, and passing on, you know, that empowerment, passing on that wisdom. Once we've asked, will be crucial, and in return, to honor that, coming as the one receiving that. In return, I want to honor them. I love that you mentioned, you know, with our gifts or whatever we can do. I don't know how that would look like, but you know, if my madrina needs me to, I don't know, create a flyer or to do a phone call or something, like, I want to do that. I want to do that because she's there for me, and I see her, you know, playing this important role in my life, and I want to honor her with these gifts and talents and abilities, and a beautiful exchange like that.
Sometimes it looks like sending them, you know, money, you know, let's just put it out there. You know, I see on Twitter a lot sometimes, pay women what they're worth, you know, and we don't take care of our own people sometimes. You know, we want to, you know, kind of like, you know, take all the information, but we don't want to pay them, and they're not going to ask for it. But you know, if you have a few things that you can send their way, you know, if you a baker, bake. If you you know, if you can cook and you're nearby and you don't got no COVID, you know, drop up something, you know, and if you could just write a check, it's always, you know, appreciated. And you don't know if you feel that in your heart, you don't know what God is telling you. You know what I'm saying? So there's various ways to give back to the people that matter in our lives.
Yeah, one of my hijas, she had a friend of hers who's a chef, a young Latinx boy who's a really gifted chef, and she had him drop off a dinner for me and my daughter.
Look at that. That's beautiful.
And that was like unsolicited. It wasn't my birthday. It was just her wanting to say, you know, you have been a gift. You have, right.
And that's the best thing. Unsolicited gifts. You know, again, this is how we honor. We have to do better. We have to do better than we have been doing. So what is it that, again, as we discern, as we spend time with God, what is he saying about honoring these people that are in your life? Juliana, you have anything to say about that? What do you need? What would you like to see?
I think one of the things is Reverenda Doctora Conde Fraser mentioned it, and it's we need people to have realistic expectations. Sometimes I have had other Latinas or women reach out to me, and their expectations for our relationship are so impossible for me to meet that I need to literally say that. And I'm like, I am so sorry. I think I cannot meet your expectations in this uh, space. And just hope for grace and the best. Um, and yeah, I hope that I have been waiting. I'm not sure if we are going to take any questions from the comments, but I think Shononoi, I hope I'm pronouncing it well. Shononoi Godoy has an amazing question too. And I think like, yeah, so realistic expectations, but do reach out. There is this person on Twitter, actually social media for me has been the way I have been able to connect to mentors, especially because I moved to the United States alone. I have none of my family here, right? And my family doesn't know anything about theological spaces. So social media has been so key. So use social media to connect, reach out. But yeah, I think if people keep realistic expectations, I'm good. I'm like, and I'm not perfect, like I will probably not be able to deliver, and I need you to understand that.
I appreciate you said that.
But
we have a phrase in the organizing world. I'm a community organizer. You call it organize up. And I always tell the young Latinas that want something from me, I say, don't be hurt that I don't remember that you want this. You have to organize up. You have to pull my tail, right? And say, and then if I really don't have it to give them, I'll say, so, espera, like wait till I'm renewed a little more, and then I'll get, check back with me in a week, right? But I do need you to organize up, not to just go, I'll be in the corner and hurt. That doesn't help us, either of us, because there aren't enough of us. For women that are called into the ministry in particular. But there are more of us, I think, that could give, that nobody has called their name. So, you do have to you look around for someone who you feel has something that you need, and then you call their name, you organize up. And then you between the two of you shape it you listen to the Spirit. I really find that being a Madrina has put my feet to the fire on listening to the Spirit. Because again, it's called out of you. To be a Madrina is called out of you by the people that need that, just like to be a mother. I mean, when I had my baby, I was like, I can't do this. I'm the wrong person. I can't do this. I'm not a mother. But she called out of me what she needed.
Amen. Amen.
Well, you have to be bold to do that. Be bold.
I believe that there was two other ones that have been shared today on that question. I think it was Haiti and Jasmine. Anyone want to share about that?
Yeah, in terms of I think in terms of what I'm hoping for, and I think what our generation is looking for, is also our potential being called out. I think when I look back in my life, I would have loved to have had some women in my life that was like, I see this in you, I see this potential in you, and I'm going to call it out in you. And so it's interesting because I feel like I'm in this awkward age where I long for that, and God has placed me now with amazing women that I can go to and say, hey, how do I handle this situation, or can you help mentor me through this? And I'm so grateful for them. And now I'm also in this season of life where I'm like, how do I continue this on and pass it on to the next generation? How do I allow myself to have the space to be available and call out the potential of those who are younger than me and say, hey, I see this in you, and I'm not threatened or see you as a competitor, but I see something in you, and so I'm going to speak that into you and call it out. And social media has been that space for me as well, where I've really been able to really build relationship with amazing women, Latinas, all over the United States, and where we've been able to just like share our stories and be able to connect. And so I love how it's been said that God is shifting and doing something different in what this looks like, because it doesn't look like how it's looked in the past generations. And so I'm excited. There's an excitement in me for what this is going to look like and how this is going to continue to shape moving forward.
Amen.
Not only for
Amen.
myself,
That's
but
great.
for all of us.
Edie?
Yeah, for me, I think it's just, this is all just an encouragement to just reach out, because I do think that, at least speaking from my personal experience, I haven't really reached out. But also, I want to mention, I've just come to terms with my passion, or a desire to go a little deeper into studying theology and ministry. And so, even in that gap, I think that for Elizabeth from the phrase you shared, even during that gap, to have somebody kind of help me discern through that, that would be so helpful. Because if we're thinking about our young millennials, or after high school, a lot of them don't know what they're going to do. A lot of them are confused. A lot of them are like still sorting. So what is that space, and who can sit in that tension with me? Who can sit in that and be okay? And even though you don't have all the answers, you'll help me discern and guide me through that. And I still consider that a madrina, even if it was just for that time. That is still very much a madrina. So.
Amen. Amen. And that's, again, goes back to what has been said, that, it takes different shapes. It's in different seasons. And instead of putting these things in a nice little box with a bow, let's receive it the way God gives it. Right. I want to just go back to the question that was asked in the chat. And the question was, some women may have a limited source of women to ask to be a madrina. Where should someone look if that is the case? Can someone take that question? Even though it was kind of answered a little bit, but just like reframe it for the person. Chanoy?
So it looks like from what we have said here, we belong to different networks. Mm-hmm. And so within those networks, and those networks also include the social media. We're part of social media networks. And so look within all of those different networks. Mm-hmm. Put it out there and explore. Explore, and part of that exploring is discerning. Know what it is that you really are looking for. Another way is reading. People who you may be looking for, look for them in the circles that you would usually find them. Where are those people usually going to be? So finding Alexia Salvatierra is different than finding Elizabeth Conde, because we're in different circles and so forth, right? Sometimes our circles overlap, and Alexia and I, we invite each other into our circles and so on and so forth, and we share resources, and I direct persons in her direction, and she might do the same, and that sort of thing. But know what it is that is your passion. Haiti, you said something. You said people don't know what to do. Well, in today's world, that's going to be more difficult to discern. I think that the new question is not what do I want to be and do, but the new question is, what is my passion? Mm-hmm. And why is that my passion? So you find what it is that you see as the place that God has called you to, the wound in the world that the Lord is calling you to. And that's your passion. And those are the gifts that you bring. And how it is that you're going to work at that passion is going to change across your lifestyle, across your lifetime, differently than for those of us who came before. For those of us who came before, the question was, like, what profession do I want to be, right? And then that profession would lead you into whatever it was. But now there's such a fluidity that the question is different. right? So again, that's a way of saying what is your passion, and where do you find persons who have similar passions? What are the circles that you're already in? What are the circles that you could be in, etc. Seek those out that way, and find persons who are in those circles. And don't be shy. Alexia already said, be bold. Don't be shy.
Yeah, I want to add something here that I think is really important. What you were saying earlier, Haiti, you were talking about empowerment, and you were talking about somebody, and you said, Jasmine, you were talking about somebody calling out of you, like looking in and seeing potential. And I was thinking, okay, there are these odd moments where the spirit just moves and you don't know somebody and you can do that, right? But those are not really the most powerful moments. The moments are ongoing relationship. And I was thinking, like, who do I actually do that for? Because that's a limited number of people, right? That I can actually carry them in my heart, right? I don't just know them, I carry them. I pray for them, I get words for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I realize that all of them are in my field. And I don't mean that professionally, I mean that in terms of passion. That the blessing of Isaac, the power that we pass on, the wisdom that we pass on, is to those who will come after us in our calling. And that's why the schools of the prophet was such a powerful image. So, I think what Elizabeth said makes so much sense to me. Like, we're not limited anymore with the internet. We have the whole world. So really, we do, like, explore the world, find, name your passion. Buechner says calling is where the world's deep hunger and your own deep gladness meet, where the world's deep hunger and your own deep gladness. Find that at least to start with, because it will morph, and then figure out who else is doing that. Because those people, it makes sense for them to sacrifice for you. It's organic, because you're going to take over from them.
Right.
Like I remember a number of years ago when a young woman said to me, "I'm going to take your job." I said, "Hurry, hurry up, cansadísima. You hurry up." So, but I think that that's absolutely accurate. Is you have to find the match, right?
So definitely, look, like all of you said, look at social media. The people that are watching today, ladies, gents, who are the people that you admire? Who are they following? And I know that they used to tell us when we were writing dissertations, to look at the bibliography. Who did they use to write their stuff? Like Dr. Elizabeth Conde-Frazier said, be reading. You could go to the brownchurchmovement.org. We have a tab there. That has Brown Church books. I mean, of course, we're going to tell you to read your own people first. Giuliani has a list of people on her site that also has divided by different disciplines, and you could look at that as well. So definitely be reading, see what is happening. Who are the people that are doing something now that have been around? And also, if you're interested, don't worry about title. Don't worry about age. Even I learned from my younger sisters. You know what I mean? Like, I see what some of them are doing, and I'm like, wow, it's amazing. And the boldness. You know what I mean? That a lot of you younger ones have. That it took me until I was like 40 to get. So what are the people that are doing? What are they doing? What are they writing? Who are they looking up to? Who do they follow? All of these things will give you the crumbs. Follow the crumbs, of what is happening in the world, and you will find the people that will speak into your life. And then don't be afraid to reach out, like everyone has said. You know what I mean? What's the worst that could happen? That they say, "Oh, I don't have time right now, but this is something that you can do, or this is someone that I know would love to be." There's nothing that will come out of asking that is a bad thing. So go onward with that. So,
And Dr. Rios, the other thing I wanted to mention is for those who speak Spanish, who are bilingual, expand your imagination for mentors. We have so many theologians and ministers in the Caribbean, in Latin America, to whom many of us are connected.
Amen.
And so learning from the South, for me, it's so essential. And I think that many of our Latinos and Latinas and people from different communities here in the United States would deeply benefit from.
And you do a good job of doing that. She always is pointing people to those things, and that's great. And we have to realize too that the people that are doing things, they're not always going to be visible on social media, right? So it's really important to just keep looking and make sure if you have a passion and you don't find it, find someone that may make guide you in the right direction. You never know. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. You see, it's almost time, and I told you it was going to go fast because we could talk. So thank you, guests of mine, all of you, for spending your time with me and sharing your wisdom. I appreciate it so much. I know that everyone that was watching today also appreciated it. If you loved the conversation today, make sure you light up that chat for some love for our panelists today. Share it on your social media sites because this is how other people know about these wonderful people on the panel today. Now, for what some of you have been waiting for, the winner of the Will You Be My Madrina invite kit is the one that followed directions. And her name is Lorena Gonzalez. Lorena Gonzalez, you have won your Madrina kit. So again, have that discernment as we heard today, and then go ahead and reach out. Go ahead and reach out to that person that you believe God is calling you to have that person pour in your life. Now follow our panelists on social media. I've put that in the chat. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget that there's a lot of things that God is doing in the world. Look for it, embrace it the way that He brings it. God bless you, everyone.